Welcome to this episode in mid-June 2024 of Dialogues with Creators. One thing I have tried to achieve in this podcast is to define creativity and look for examples of creativity in a more broad sense and in all walks of life, not just the typical ones that folks think about. Today, we get a 2-for-1 in two ways. We have a married couple, and they are creative, to my knowledge, in at least two distinct but not really unrelated fields: music and farming. Join me for this fascinating talk. Our guests today are Ellie Jenkins and Eric Hanson, who are owners of the Hissing Possum Farm in Catoosa County, Georgia, Tunnel Hill to be exact. While this is not the first podcast interviewee who is a farmer, it's the first who is, well, a couple and who are also world-class musicians, so we're going to wander into that territory too. Ellie and Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, I've been looking forward to this. So let's start with the easy one. Why the name of Hissing Possum for your farm?
We get asked this all the time, and it is, in fact, based on a true story.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
about 2018, Ellie was taking a sewing class, and her sewing machine was out in our barn, which became our storage facility. And I went out at about 10 o'clock at night. She asked if I would go get her sewing machine and walked out with a headlamp, lifted up the tarp where the sewing machine was behind it. And in between me and the sewing machine was a possum that stood up on its hind and hissed at me. Put the tarp back down, walked back in the house, told Ellie what happened. And she's like, I think the sewing machine can wait.
Yes, at night. They come out at night, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. And was he essentially a friendly possum or what?
I just left it alone. We love possums on the farm. It's they're scavengers. They're looking for the grubby bad stuff and not the fresh green stuff. And they eat mice, rats, different critters that we don't like. They eat ticks.
Yeah.
So
it just thought it had a safe place and objected to being invaded.
Yep.
Okay. You did get your sewing machine eventually.
Yes, the next morning.
Okay. So you decided that would be your moniker, if you.
Yeah, we had been, ever since we bought the place, we had been trying to come up with a name and hadn't come up with anything that we were really excited about. And I think I posted about this on Facebook, and someone suggested, "Hey, Hissing Possum Retreat," and there it was.
Yeah, you mentioned the retreat. Was that one of your goals eventually, for it to be a retreat?
No,
Or is that just the name?
more like a retreat for us.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Not for other people. Okay.
Right.
So you don't have
Away from other people.
an Airbnb there or anything.
Yeah. They're really not good hosts.
Yeah, I when I bought my house, I thought I'd do that, and I've haven't gotten into it yet. So I don't know that I want strangers in my house after all. So
You could rent a room to new faculty.
that's true. I thought one thing that is people do is nurses, traveling nurses.
Yeah.
That would be probably what I'd want, not just random people. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, so you had owned the farm for a while before it was given that name. And so that's what I want to go into, is why you got this farm in the first place.
Well, we wanted a little bit of land. We wanted to be out of the subdivision where we were. And even when we bought our house in subdivision, we knew we wanted some property eventually. And we thought, okay, we can manage 5 acres is probably the maximum we can manage. And so we were looking, and we could not find anything that was both what we wanted and what we could afford at that kind of 3 to 5 acre mark. Mm-hmm. And we had kind of set it aside. And then I think it was it was a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Eric was just looking at Zillow randomly because we had gotten aggravated with our neighbor the day before. And he passes the phone to me and says, "What do you think about this?" And I start looking at pictures of this place, and I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with this? I don't see what the hang up is, except that it was almost 10 acres." And so we're like, well, if we let half of it grow up with trees and forests, then we could probably keep track of it. And so I had a gig that afternoon, or maybe both. No, I think it was just me.
Yeah.
For Snow Queen. And so in between him finding that and my rehearsal that I had to be at, we ran up here and kind of scoped it out and decided it was worth looking at more seriously. So, but the answer to the question, what's wrong with this, was still to come, because there were plenty of things wrong with the house.
Okay. So, yeah.
Not in quite as good a shape as it appeared to be, but.
Yeah. So do you think maybe that 10 acres was less attractive to people in general than the 5, and that's why the price difference or whatever?
It could be. I don't know. It was just really timely that it popped up, because we'd been looking off and on for a while, and it just appeared. It was weird because it had been on the market for a little while too, and we hadn't run across it. So, it could be that the acreage, many people are looking for 3 acres or 5 acres and not some. And I don't know.
Yeah, and I think part of what caused it to actually pop up on my Zillow account was it had just gone through like a pretty hefty price drop.
Oh, right.
And so all of a sudden it was just outside of what we were thinking about price wise. And it's like, well, everything else we've seen is actually worse. So
can I ask what year this was?
This was the end of 2016, November 2016. Okay.
So it was right before things went berserk in the market.
Yeah. A couple years before that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because,
we couldn't buy this place now. There's no way.
Yeah. Because when I looked for property in Catoosa County, it was just, I couldn't, it was just too much. And I'm talking for a house. I mean, for a house, a livable house. And that's not to say there aren't livable houses. There are, but it just was outside my price range. So,
right.
Yeah.
If you look at Zillow now, the value on this place is more than twice what we paid for it.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. And you've done a lot of work though. So, but so you were looking for a acreage and more property with the goal of
not being bored.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of truth to that as the statement. We wanted a place that we could do things. We had any number of different interests. We had talked about a garden farm of some kind at some point, along the way.
We wanted more space for our dogs. We wanted, to not have neighbors so close that we were worried about the dogs being a problem, or my practicing being a problem, honestly.
Okay, so your goal wasn't necessarily to have Hissing Possum Farm at the beginning. Okay.
No, we just keep stumbling along and figuring things out as we go.
Okay. So continue with the story of how you stumbled.
I don't know exactly. I think in 2019, there were a couple of things just in general that had gone on, and we talked about doing starting a farm of some kind to give ourselves an option, as we keep looking at stuff, things that we'd like to do, things that we want to do to have.
Also, we had gotten several years before, we had gotten heavily interested in the local food movement.
Yeah.
And so we had already been shopping at farmers markets and members of CSAs and growing a lot of our own food in just a garden. And so it was sort of, I mean, it's a big step, but kind of a natural step to starting a small farm of our own. Though I think when we envisioned starting to farm, we're like, okay, this is just an expansion of a garden, and it is not that at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Think not. Yeah.
It's a much different, farming is much different than gardening.
Yeah.
Okay. So how is it different other than the size of the thing?
The planning, the logistics, the getting things reliably ready to sell every week.
There's a certain relentlessness to farming as opposed to gardening. You know, most gardeners, you know, they'll make their first planting and then they either decide to make a second planting for summer or fall, or they just go, I'm tired of this. I'm going to walk away.
Yeah.
And deal with the farm, you know, we're at 2 markets a week and, you know, and various other things. We have to have stuff to sell all the time, you know, so twice a week we're planting, 2, 3, 4 days a week we're harvesting, we're, you know, and prepping and taking everything. So it's like so many things that we've done in the past. I mean, music for us practicing, it's all a wash, rinse, repeat business.
Music is relentless as well.
Yes. Yeah. I can see that. So, that's interesting so you might plant more than twice a year.
He plants
twice a week.
Yeah.
We're planting certain things twice a week. Yeah. So like some of our biggest sellers are radishes, salad mix, arugula. We do one planting for each market that we do every week. So just to make sure that we have it.
And we're growing radishes year round and greens year round. So those are about a 1 month.
Yeah.
From start to finish. So from seeding to harvesting is about a month on radishes.
Okay.
So he's planting them really, really regularly so he can harvest for Main Street Market on this day and harvest for Marietta Square on this day and then do it again the next week.
So once you harvest some greens, they're gone. So you have to use some more. They have more ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, certain seasons it's what's called cut and come again. So you cut it and then they'll grow back. Right. But right now, where it's approaching 90 degrees every day, you cut it and it pretty much cooks it. So
yeah.
And he has basically gotten himself another graduate degree in farming. By just like every single night for the last 5 years, I guess he's been in the office watching YouTube videos, reading everything he can find, like studying how to do this better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what was your first crop then? Greens?
Radishes.
Radishes.
I thought it was crazy to plant radishes because I'm not a radish person.
Yeah, it's funny, you know. So the first bed that we seeded was radishes. And I told Ellie that, you know, we planted a whole bed of radishes and she was like, what? Why? And,
yeah, that's what I'm asking.
and that's, you know, some years that's like a third of what we sell is radishes.
Wow.
And depending on the season, it as much as half.
Yeah.
You know? So
I would have never planted radishes because I'm very lukewarm on radishes.
Yeah.
And I love radishes.
Yeah.
Oh,
he'll eat them while he's standing out there picking them. And I'm like, I guess you can put one on my salad. It's all right.
Well, this is inspiring. I'm going to have to try radishes. I mean, I guess the people that eat them have things they do with them other than just put them on a salad.
It's a lot of people, especially the Europeans that we run into, like them just sliced on a buttered piece of bread.
Okay.
And you roast them because, you know, we have your European customers. They buy them, you know, multiple bunches of them and they roast them with their vegetables and their meat and their whatnot. And then when we go to Austria during the summer, we go to these events at the mayor's office and they have sandwiches for us. Well, there's sliced radishes on every sandwich that you pick up.
Okay. All right. So, folks listening, try radishes.
Yeah.
What came after the radishes?
Well, you were already planting. You were planting arugula and salad mix at the same time, right?
Yeah.
I remember the first time we sold stuff, we had salad mix and arugula and radishes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the bulk of things for the first couple months anyway.
Yeah.
And I have to say that for those listening, that Ellie's office was right next to mine, and she introduced me to arugula, which I now love.
Oh, good.
It's different because you're not expecting that kick.
It'll wake you up, right?
Yeah. It's the spicy lettuce, the green. It's very interesting. Very good. So
to smell the flowers too, because the flowers on arugula or on any of these greens, honestly, the flowers are very tasty. And arugula flowers in particular, they get that peppery zing, but they've also got a little bit of nuttiness to them. And the texture is really interesting. So I really like eating the flowers. And we actually had a little kid out here. How old is he? 6?
Yeah, 5, 6. Yeah.
Came out with his dad to explore the farm. And we gave him arugula flowers, and he decreed that they were the best thing he'd ever eaten.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Children are given to exaggeration, I think.
Yeah. And on the flower front, like our mustard greens, we had a chef contact us asking if we had mustard flowers and what do we sell them for? How much do we sell them for? And I'm like, we've never sold them, but I've picked at them and eaten them out on the farm. And they bought for a special event, they bought like 50 to 75 mustard flowers to garnish salads with. Oh. And it's like, it's amazing the different things, it's like what's edible and not.
And the things you would never get in a grocery store. You would never get those flowers in the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So greens and radishes. And what was next? Or is that?
Well, the whole first planting, we planted carrots, and some of it takes longer. Some of it's shorter, so spinach, carrots,
collards,
kale. Yeah. So we run a pretty wide gamut of that sort of thing on the farm. Cabbage.
Yeah, cabbage.
Oh, okay.
And that's all. Most of that stuff is spring and fall. Some of it carries over the winter. We have done less with kind of the standard summer stuff, like tomatoes and okra and peppers. Partly because we find people want tomatoes right up until the time that we have them. And then the tomato plant in their backyard has ripe tomatoes on it at the same time. And so then they want to buy tomatoes.
Right. Yeah. Well, tomatoes aren't hard to find. So, once they come in season. So, do you do squash?
We do. Yeah. So, we do have summer squash planted. We're still waiting for our first round of summer squash.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're kind of in a cold spot here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we do have winter squashes planted now. So those will be, they're starting to germinate now, and those will be harvested September, October, and hopefully as a storage crop, we'll be selling that through the winter.
One of our favorite things that we grew last year was delicata squash, which is a summer squash, but it looks like a winter squash, right?
Oh.
It's a winter squash, but it looks like a summer squash.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
like a little oblong squash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about the size of your typical zucchini that you're going to buy at the store. And I know we would get them in CSAs, in our CSA box, and be like, we don't hate them, but it's just like, what do you do?
We didn't know what to do with that. Like, we're the same as everybody else. We didn't know what to do with stuff that we hadn't grown up eating, right? So it's all been a huge learning curve for us from when we started as members of our first CSA, like madly trying to figure out what to do with delicata and with garlic scapes and with, 12 other things that we weren't used to dealing with. And now they're some of our favorites.
Yeah.
And
I don't know what a garlic scape is.
We're just at the end of garlic scape season right now. The scape is the flower bud of the hardneck garlic plant.
Okay.
And so it sends up a shoot and gets a little bulb on the end of it. And that whole shoot is edible and tastes like garlic.
Okay.
So you can cut that up into little pieces and use it in a stir fry. You can cut it into a salad. You can use it any way you would use garlic. Our favorite way to use garlic scapes is garlic scape pesto, which we make and put in the freezer. So, because usually around the end of January, I'm ready to abandon all hope because I feel like winter's never going to end. And Eric will drag out some garlic scape pesto and give me hope that spring is coming.
Yeah. Well, and us figuring out what to do with all of these things, so like garlic scapes, and then like the delicata squash, I had customers at Main Street. Well, what do we do with this? And we discovered a delicata squash fries. So basically, and got this one customer to buy a couple and went home and he made delicata squash fries out of it. And he came back a couple of weeks later and he's like, okay, I need more of that delicata squash. And I'm like, we're actually sold out. It's gone for the season. He's like, you're just like a drug pusher, man. You're just like, you get me to like something and now you're out. I'm going to go through delicata squash withdrawals.
Okay. So you've used the term CSA just to define that. Is it an association of like getting
agriculture is and they started out as being like groups of customers would basically pay a lump sum at the beginning of the growing season. So say they pay $300 up front to get 10 bags of veggies.
Okay.
And at first this was really like the customer and the farmer were sort of sharing risk because the customer was paying up front and they didn't know if they were going to get
$300 worth or not.
Yeah.
What it's evolved into is more of a kind of
a veggie box. So where more or less, so the farmer ends up having to work with other people or buy stuff. Things. Yeah. And so like the original CSA model, if you had 30 members and you had 15 cabbages, you cut the cabbages in half and put them in each box.
Right. Everybody just split everything.
But now everybody wants that cabbage. And so if you have 30 members and 15 cabbage, now you have to go find 15 cabbages to, so it's really become more of a grocery service in some ways.
Some farmers do this really well and they've got deals worked out with other farmers with similar growing practices. Yeah. And they just have standing arrangements for trading things. Yeah. And for us, that always sounded like way too much stress and pressure. Yeah. And so we haven't gone, we really enjoyed the CSAs that we've been members of because we enjoy the surprise part of it.
Right.
We do. Yeah. But it just sounded like way too stressful to be
to do it
collecting money from customers and then trying to meet their expectations.
Yeah. We know enough about that with teaching. Right. Yeah. You don't want your side hustle to be more difficult than your day job or whatever they call it. Okay. So that brings me to you mentioned practices. So let's talk about your practices as far as organic, no pesticides, blah, blah, all that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And so we are an organic practices farm. And I'm that way. We're not certified organic because of
we're not certified anything.
Yeah. It's more or less a paperwork issue. I mean, the amount of paperwork you have to go through and keep and save and have to present. But, we use no chemicals. We use, so no chemical pesticide, fertilizer, herbicide. You come here, you buy some stuff from us, you're going to see some bug bites out of it. You buy veggies from us, you're going to find some weeds in it. You buy,
the occasional flea beetle.
Yeah, you might get a flea beetle in your bag. Arugula. I mean, because they're out here. We manage all of this in an organic fashion. So it's not like, we go out and spray with Roundup and it kills everything that's not, modified to combat Roundup. So but that's important to us because we would rather find a bug bite out of a green or a bug in our bag of stuff or 2 or 5, because, that at least tells us that we're getting a healthy meal. Not getting the chemical.
The bug's okay with it, so it must be okay.
Well,
Yeah.
So it,
And basically, like anyone that's farming with organic practices, you're going to have bugs.
Yeah. And then
And you're going to have bug bites.
Yeah. And
it's just a matter of how well you can manage it. And we're learning to manage it better with like doing row covers and
insect netting and various things.
Yeah.
And we're a no-till farm, so minimal disruption farm. So we're saving the soil structure by not tilling. Tilling actually brings up weed seeds from 6-8 inches down, and you get different weed pressure problem.
So Eric has prepared all of the farm beds using a broad fork. Which tremendous amount of work on the
side.
But then the first year is awful. The second year was significantly better.
Yeah. And so we're a non-machine farm. We we're powered by peanut butter and butter sandwiches. And it's all hand harvested. We're not, the mechanical part is minimal. So our petroleum usage is probably like a grill size cylinder of propane every year. And that's it. And that's to, flame weed beds to make sure that we, as weed seed germinates before we plant, we kill the little weeds that have germinated and kill the seeds themselves. So
we do own a small tractor, but it gets used for mowing the trails through the woods and bush hogging a little bit, but it really doesn't get used on the farm.
Yep.
Okay. So do you use anything though to discourage the bugs? Like is something safe?
Yes. Yeah. So everything's, so we use some of the pest management tools that we use. We about 6 times a year, we spray beneficial nematodes, which are little microscopic worms that hunt the larvae of our pests.
Yeah.
We use, Pyganic, which is a pyrethrin wax. It's an organic material. Spray that very judiciously and make sure pollinators aren't around when we're spraying.
Yeah.
And then there's a product called Spinosad, which is a sugarcane based product. And that's, all of these things you can drink. I mean, reasonably safely. I mean, you don't want to have much of it, but it's rated to be sprayed, and literally you can spray it, harvest it, eat it without washing it. And that's one of the things that's important. And then we spray garlic juice, and that helps deter a lot of things too. So,
yeah. Well, we're so used to seeing perfect vegetables, and that's not like normal.
Right.
That everything's perfect and,
Yeah.
And everything we use is organically rated. So it's the same thing that certified organic farmers are using.
Yeah.
And everything that leaves this property has been washed sometimes a couple of times before it gets packaged and sold. So you say you go to 2 markets. One's in Marietta and one's in Chattanooga. Okay. And Main Street Farmers Market in Chattanooga on Wednesdays, and at the Marietta Square Market on Saturday mornings.
Okay. I'll have to get up then up to Chattanooga for the Main Street one, because
it's a good market.
Yeah, and it's on, when you say it's on Main Street, as in,
so it's in the parking lot of Finley Stadium now.
Okay.
6, yeah. And just a note on that. So it's in the parking lot. There's free parking for customers. So the vendors of the Main Street Market, we pay a booth fee, we pay rent for that space. And one of the things that is really beneficial with that is the customer doesn't have to go looking for street parking.
Right.
Pull into the parking lot and park in a parking space and park for free. It's already paid for. And, come and buy your veggies, your meat,
there's a lot of great vendors at Main Street.
Yeah. Okay. Your yogurt, your kefir, any number of things. Yeah.
Right. So that's good to know. I did not know that was because there used to be a market on Sunday mornings up that way.
There still is, but that's
not
a
too much
different.
a farmer. It's more of a artsy.
Yeah.
Right. That's the Chattanooga market.
Okay.
And most of the produce that's sold there is resellers that are trucking it in from far away.
Okay.
South Georgia,
not the
Florida,
point.
South Carolina.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good to know. So can I ask you, what's your successful, most popular? Is it the greens?
Man, it changes from market to market. If we could figure that out.
I have used this example, we've had markets where I've brought 5 pounds of arugula to sell and it sells out in 15 minutes, and harvest 10 pounds the next week and I'm coming home with 8.
Right.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you just never know. But, at big sellers, we sell a lot of radishes. We sell a lot of carrots. I'm bringing 20 bunches of carrots to market with me tomorrow that none of them will probably come home.
Okay.
We're selling a lot of onions.
Yeah. And this is our first year where we've had success growing onions.
And they're so good.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Okay.
So
are they like the ones that little bulb and the...
Well, they're normal onions. So
normal.
We've got
big ones. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's smaller ones too.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Okay.
I harvested 1.5 pounds onion last week. So
yikes. Okay.
So
that's a blooming onion there.
Exactly.
Exactly right.
Have you tried something that didn't work out so well? Tried to grow something that was not something you came back to?
Well, so what's funny, so onions we've grown before and we've never had any success. And this year we're having success with them for any number of reasons. Something that we've grown before and we keep coming back to is broccoli. The problem with broccoli is everybody and I shouldn't say everybody maybe, but everybody and everything loves broccoli.
Yeah.
Including deer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Name the pest and you're going to be lucky to get it to market. Yeah, and that's any time of year. So,
and it takes a long time to grow. And
I would think, yeah. Yeah.
But we'll plant some more this fall and we'll
see how it goes.
We're
yet to sell any broccoli. Right?
Yeah, we've yet to sell broccoli, and until this right now, we've never had onions to sell at market before.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent a picture, I think, to Ellie, that had gloves that had 2 onions on them, to show the size of the onion. And then I sent another picture with just empty gloves. And it was basically like the first picture with onions was we've got onions to sell. And the other picture with no onions on the gloves was we've never had onions to sell before.
Yeah.
So there are things, but we keep coming back to it because we see that the wider our veggie availability is, the better we do as a farm.
Yeah. And the more variety we have on the table, the more attracted the customers seem to and this is one thing we found with back to the radishes. Yeah. If we've got radishes on the table, this big pile of beautiful red, it will sort of magnetically draw people over to the table. Even if they don't buy any radishes, they'll come over and buy something.
Yeah. And it's so funny because you bring that up, Ellie, because last year at Main Street, way on the other side of the market, a woman was looking at our table and saw the red of the radishes, and she came from where she was buying something over to our table and said, "Oh my God, your radishes are so beautiful. That bright red, it attracted me to come over to your table. I hate radishes. I'm not going to buy anything, but I'll buy this bag of lettuce from you."
Well, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that though, because most of the time other than tomatoes, most of the time when you're at a farmer's market, everything's kind of muted colors, but the radish is that pinkish red,
kind of electric fuchsia color.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we do see that. We'll have a big pile of radishes, and when that big pile of radishes gets whittled down to maybe one bunch of radishes, you see the rest of it sell less too, because there's not that eye catch.
Okay. I'm inspired. I'm gonna get some radishes here. Okay, so how much land then? How many acres of the actual farm? Is that a question I can ask, or is it not a?
Yeah. So the amount of land that's dedicated to the farm is about 1 acre.
Okay.
It's amazing. Everybody thinks of farming, you have to have more land, more land, more land. Yeah. And you don't have to have more land. You just have to be creative and plant things well.
Well, there's a guy in England, Charles Dowding.
Yeah.
Growing incredible amounts of food on an acre. And then they're very, very famous farmers, Yeah. So Charles Dowding is a big name in the small farm community. Jean Martin Fortier in Quebec, Canada. His first farm was 1.5 acres, and doing very well on 1.5 acres. And there's somebody in Tennessee who on 1 acre last year produced $500,000 worth of vegetables on 1 acre. And like, for example, I harvested 2 bed feet. So a 30-inch wide bed by really 25 feet long, but I harvested 2 feet of this carrot bed, and I harvested 15 bunches of big carrots on 2 feet. And the big mass carrot places that's, that amount of carrot is probably, 1/8 of an acre is planted yet at times, just the way that they're row spacing and mechanical planting.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're having to bring machines over it too. I guess that's the thing. Yeah. So as opposed to just feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been very, so far, this has been really educational to me because I have a small raised bed garden in my backyard, of my home now. And, it needs help. So I need to think about these things. And it's time for a second planting, basically, of some things. So I really enjoyed your website, and so I
need to update it desperately.
Oh, well, they always do. And so it's hissingpossumfarm.com. And so do you sell your produce to restaurants, or it's not something you've done yet? Because I've always wondered how people do that.
Well, hit and miss. We've sold to a couple of chefs.
Yeah, so we've sold to chefs. We've sold a few things along the way. It's actually really intimidating for me, to be perfectly honest with you, because
chefs are picky. I mean, rightly so. Right. They want everything to be beautiful, and they want and we want it to taste great and look beautiful too. But promising someone that when you don't know what could go wrong is a different thing. But last fall, he had a chef order 40 pounds of garlic, or not arugula.
And that's a lot of arugula.
That's a lot of arugula. I took a picture of it leaving the property, and it was a whole cart full of arugula. But he ordered ahead of time, and Eric made a really solid plan and just planted way more arugula than he could possibly need. Right. And he delivered it. And and the chef was so surprised that he actually delivered what he said he would deliver when he said he would deliver it.
That's interesting.
Well, that's the other thing that a lot of chefs deal with, and having kind of worked on and studied some of this stuff, you send your chef your availability of veggies for the week. They place their order and say arugula, and you say you have 40 pounds available, and the chef orders 40 pounds of it, but you only have 20. Then you say you're going to deliver 20. I'm going to short you 20. And I don't like that.
And meanwhile, the chef plan their menu around the 40.
Sure.
And now they're scrambling, trying to find it. And that's how the industry does kind of work. But I have a hard time working in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You don't want to promise anything that we don't can deliver.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather promise and over deliver. That's, that.
Yeah.
You brought up the word about people who have less acreage, but they can produce more food.
Yep.
And you use the word creativity, and that is what this podcast is about. So, how else does creativity work in this environment, in this effort?
I really think it's just problem solving.
Yeah.
And being willing to change course, which honestly is not always our best thing because we're both very linear sometimes. Right. But
well, I think sometimes, so with that, the creative part or the linear part, like we plant a lot of beds every year. Not every bed is successful, and sometimes, so I, what day is it? It's Tuesday today.
Yeah.
On Sunday, I looked at 2 beds, a couple of days earlier and was like, these just need to go, like I'd seeded them once and they had nothing worth saving. And in the past, it's like, it's going to come. And you keep looking at it and it never materializes. And so it's kind of that thinking both creatively, like what can we do to salvage this? Nothing. Move on.
Right.
So it's, you just get the wheel hoe out and kind of anything that's there and you just rework it and you recalibrate and you move to the next crop.
Right. I think that's where I am with half of one of my raised beds. I just need to start all over again. Yeah. That's one thing about living here. You have a long growing season, at least,
Right.
I guess you can, you can start in April pretty much if you're planting things.
It just depends on what you're growing. You don't want to plant potatoes in April, but.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
So you are both what I would call world-class musicians because you go all over the world. And so I'm beginning to think there are actually 4 of you instead of 2 of you. Because I'm trying to get my head around, all right, when do you do all this work and teach your classes and then also practice all you have to for your musical ventures? So, Eric, your instrument is?
Double bass or string
double bass. Yes, string bass. And Ellie, yours is?
The horn, also known as the French horn.
Yes. And they are going to Austria this year?
Yep.
Okay. Is that going to get in the way of your farm? Your farm?
We plan around. I say we. Eric is planning around that.
Yeah. So we have plantings that are kind of scheduled around that.
Okay.
We'll have things that are mostly grown before we leave. That'll be ready when we get back. We'll have a couple of people look in on the farm, make sure irrigation is running. And hopefully we don't have similar problems like we had last year. We had 6 woodchucks move in while we were gone.
Yeah.
So
you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's true. Because you're pretty much out from the town area, right? Yeah. So you have more wildlife to deal with, I guess.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, we've got a pretty good sized wooded area, and then there's good sized wooded area adjoining our property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not to mention all the pastures around us. So
right,
we've got a lot of deer. We've got a lot of rabbits. We got the groundhogs. Actually, are the worst pests that we've encountered.
Yeah,
that they will just eat an entire plant.
Oh yeah. I shouldn't say that because in my neighborhood, where I live in Dalton, there were deer in it the other day. So
yeah, the deer are overpopulated everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so how do you find time to do all this?
We try not to think too hard about it.
Yeah.
It's like, we're both pretty good at logistics.
Mm-hmm.
I always say I keep a paper calendar because an electronic calendar would mess me up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a list maker, so I have lists for every day and every week and what needs to be done next month and when this article is due or so I have lists for the whole summer right now. Eric has most of that stuff in his head, except for the farm. You've got pretty.
I have a pretty good list for the farm, and I think the thing maybe you don't get used to, but you accept is that it's just never done.
Right.
So you take a lot of times you take one thing off the list and 10 new things go on, and that's just
right.
The way.
And I will say, a lot of what we do, most of what we do is legitimately really hard work. It's hard work that we enjoy. Maybe we're a little masochistic that way. And I'm constantly telling students too that I don't necessarily enjoy practicing every day, but I really enjoy playing in certain situations. And in order to play in those situations, it means I have to practice every day. Mm-hmm. So I tell them it's like putting money in the bank, and it's like, it doesn't matter if it's, 9:00 at night and I don't feel like practicing, but I haven't practiced what I needed to that day. I need to go sit down with my horn and do the work that needs doing. Mm-hmm. Or if I haven't graded the papers that I need to grade, or if I haven't, whatever it is or if I haven't updated the farm post so we can get stuff sold for this week.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what young people today have trouble with is that they don't see how much time they waste on certain things, and you develop. It's not like this. It's not like you started a farm and all of a sudden it was where you are now. This happened over time to get to the schedule where you could accomplish what you needed to accomplish, but you also knew that you had to give up 3 hours on TikTok or something.
Right.
Which you wouldn't do anyway, but
everybody wastes time in their own way. We definitely do not work all the time. We're, I think, fairly good about that.
I think so.
We have long days, but we have segments of the day where we're not really doing anything. And I think that's fine. Everybody needs to check out mentally.
Yeah.
But I do emphasize for my students, I emphasize that I'm not practicing because I want to all the time. I'm not doing all this work because I feel like it and I'm inspired to do it. I'm doing it because it's a down payment on a future event that is going to be really rewarding. And I don't know, sometimes I walk in the practice room not feeling at all like practicing, and it turns out to be a really valuable practice session, and I do enjoy it. So I'm always trying to talk to students, my horn students, I would say, about that. Less so my music appreciation students, because they often don't have any association with what I'm talking about.
Reference point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Does your creativity in music and the farm intersect any, you think? Other than you mentioned problem solving?
I'm qualified to answer that question.
I'm sure it does in some way, but I don't know that I can tell you how.
Right.
Yeah.
I look at so many things. I think that, the years in the practice room and the persistence of pursuing music, and doing those things, I think that part has played some part on the farm, like I said earlier, the wash, rinse, repeat part of it, you work on an excerpt for some symphony, you work on it slowly, and then you increase the tempo, and and it's like the farm was sort of that same way. Certain things went a lot slower, and then now it's much faster because of the practice of it. I think that part has played in some of those ways that has played a part. And
I think we're using our creativity every single day, but I really can't define how we do that.
Well, I think a lot of it would have to do with patience too. Nothing in both of the cases, it takes so much patience and just stick-to-itiveness to get to where, you can play the music that you're going to perform it's not going to come like this, you know?
I would say neither of us is patient, but we are probably tenacious.
Yes. You're dogged.
Right.
I was going to say, you call it patience. We probably call it stubbornness and hard-headedness. And we will not fail at
too done to quit.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of that in patience, though. I mean, sometimes it's just, I'm going to get this done no matter what.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't think patience is always, let's just sit and wait and something will rain,
right.
you know, because it's hard work through the patience. But when I'm talking to people who aren't writers about books, the books I've written, they'll say, I don't have the patience to do that. And I want to say,
you're like, not patient.
Yeah.
At the desk and
patience is, I don't know what they're different,
well,
you know.
And writing it in some ways is a lot like music. It's, it's the practice of it.
Yes.
You don't just sit down and all of a sudden write well. There are years of reading and the horrible papers I wrote when I was a freshman in college years ago. You practice more, you write more, you get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the
get better at putting down on the paper what's in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've read the book Grit, about the supposed 10,000 hours of practice you're supposed to have before you're an expert kind of thing. Well, there's somebody that came up with the writing that you have to write 1 million words of fiction before and then throw them all away. And then you're ready to write. And I said, well, that's nice, but I don't,
I'm not going to count the words. So
yeah. But I think that's where the patience in many people's mind comes in. So
and it's so annoying to me actually when people are saying, "Oh, you're so lucky to be so talented in music." And I'm like,
yeah,
like, dude, this is not talent. This is decades of hard work.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
they mean well. I try to not react negatively, but I'm like, this is not talent.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that does diminish it a little bit. I think, that it's just something that was zapped onto you that did not come through a lot of hard work.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and that's the whole thing about creativity is people think you either got it or you don't. And I don't agree with that. It can be developed. You can be trained, but you have to have something that you're doing to work at it. It's not just, I'm creative.
And there's a new book that's about to be released. I should send you a link for this. It's by a horn player. It's not about horn playing. It's about creativity.
Oh, okay.
And
I'd love to read that.
He's aiming it at kind of everyone, saying that, like, we use creativity every day in all of our lives.
Yes.
And so it's exploring that. I'll send you the link.
Okay, great. And I'll put it in the show notes for the podcast. Okay. Well, anything else y'all want to say?
No.
I have so enjoyed this conversation. It was cool. It's good to see you. We, for those who don't know, Ellie was next door to me, but we were separated in this last 6 months or so because they're renovating our building. And well, thanks so much.
Thanks, Barbara. Nice talking to you.
Yes, nice to see you.
Right.
Bye.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. We produce one about every 2 weeks. Please visit the archives to see the writers, educators, entrepreneurs, activists, organizational leaders, scholars, filmmakers, and other artists we have talked to it. I want to thank Clemencia Villafuerte, our producer, who makes us sound so good on every podcast. Check the show notes. Goodbye.